and we have at least 1/3 that definitely should be there, and I reel back.
Thank you for yielding back. Mr. Self, you're recognized for 5 minutes. Mr. Self.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to explore your using the Brady Act because somehow we've conflated this with suicide prevention as opposed to the superior constitutional right. Why do you think the Brady Act gives you the constitutional right to report? And let me expand the question. You said, are you the only federal agency that has read the Brady Act that way? It seems that you are.
I'm going to thank you for your question and ask my colleague from OGC to chime in on this one, if you could, Mr. Behrens.
Yes, thank you. So the Brady Act authorizes the Department of Justice to request and obtain records from any agency on categories of individuals identified in the Act who are prohibited from owning guns. VA merely complies with that requirement, so I don't think our interpretation is unique in that respect. Our interpretation is one.
Who else does it?
Well, the department, we verified that interpretation with the Department of Justice when they issued their regulations.
What other federal agencies make the same determination?
I can't speak for what other federal agencies do. Are you talking about determinations of incompetence?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Report to the DOJ and then have weapons taken away under the Brady Act. What other agencies do that?
So as far as I'm aware, Social Security Administration makes similar determinations of the need for a representative payee. I'm not aware of other agencies that are making similar determinations.
Okay, we're discussing, it seems to me, hearing the chairman and the ranking member, we're discussing drama and emotion here versus the rule of law. The alleged problem that I want to discuss is the Second Amendment, because there is no judicial review here. I know of legislative processes. I know of judicial processes. Mr. Burke, you say this is not a bureaucratic process. What would you call it then, if you don't call it a bureaucratic process? What would you call it?
Well, the actual process of determining competency for a veteran is something that's been in our fiduciary portfolio for many years.
What would you call it if it's not a bureaucratic process?
I wouldn't call it a bureaucratic process. It is an established process that we follow. With respect to us turning those names over in accordance with NICS, we call that complying with federal law.
We have legislative processes, we have judicial processes. What would you call this? It's got to conform to eventually constitutional. And how do we get a court of law involved before you make this determination? Tell us, as Congress, how do we do that?
Well, I think, sir, one of the concerns we have about getting a court of law involved before was what I mentioned briefly a moment ago, is the concern that it could potentially or will elongate the process. And for us, with veteran suicide prevention being at the forefront of our clinical focus, we don't want folks in harm's way for an extended period of time to secure.
I got what you want, but we're talking about a constitutional right here that requires a high bar to take it away, a high bar. Anyone will tell you it takes a high bar to take a constitutional right away. That's what the chairman was referring to in his newspaper example. How do we raise the bar here before we take a constitutional right away? That's the question.
So, sir, I've spent my entire adult life either in uniform or serving those that were in uniform, and I'll continue to do that by doing two things: complying with federal law, which I believe we're doing in this case.
What's the highest federal law?
What's the highest federal law?
Yes, that's my question.
I'm not quite sure I understand that.
It is the Constitution. And therefore, it takes a high bar to take a constitutional right away. That's why the Second Amendment, we heard more words about, we heard a lot of words here today. The Second Amendment is very clear. It takes a high bar. I think my time is almost up. I will yield back after I say we need to establish a higher bar here, and you need to help Congress with how we do that. Rather than having the administrative state make this determination on a constitutional right. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Self. Ms. Brownlee, you're recognized.